Mother of billionaire exposes dark truth as uniform is ripped, shocking transformation revealed. Ruth Johnson stood at the front of the gym, the buzzing crowd suddenly dense with silence, all eyes glued to her. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of the truth she was about to unleash. The crisp fabric of the oversized blazer she wore, so unlike her worn jeans and scuffed sneakers, was choking her. It was a costume designed to hide her reality, a narrative built for appearances. Today, she would tear it away. In a small Midwestern town, Ruth had spent her life juggling 3 jobs, each day blending into the next. Cleaning office buildings after hours, waiting tables at the local diner during the day, and stocking shelves in the grocery store on weekends, she had given everything for her son Jake. Her heart swelled each night as he studied late into the night, dreaming of a future as bright as his smile. But beneath those hopes was the gnawing awareness that their lives were meant to fit the mold of the American dream, a path shaped by invisible lines of economic inequality. Ruth often felt the sting of judgment from the very folks she sought to impress. Whispers followed her like shadows, their hushed tones echoing her fears of inadequacy. "She's just a waitress," they would say, as if those words could devalue her sacrifices. But she pushed through the doubt, her love fueling her relentless fight for Jake, her high school senior, bound for greatness. As the season of graduation approached, hope finally illuminated the dark clouds surrounding them. Jake received a prestigious scholarship to a renowned university, the kind that sparkled with promise. Yet, as he stood on the precipice of his dreams, self-doubt gnawed at him like a starving wolf. He wrestled with feelings of being a charity case, a success story constructed to assuage the guilt of wealth. Clad in that uncomfortable, expensive uniform, he felt like a ghost, lost between 2 worlds, one filled with privilege and the other rooted in the grit of survival. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. One evening, at the community fundraiser meant to showcase talent and pride, Ruth overheard a conversation that shattered the remnants of her belief in their borrowed success. 2 well-to-do community members spoke nonchalantly about Jake, how he must present a narrative of privilege that would make the scholarship seem earned rather than a lifeline thrown to a drowning swimmer. The realization hit her like a slap. Their struggles weren't the backdrop for a shining success story, they were merely props in someone else's fairy tale. Fueled by heartbreak and indignation, Ruth stepped into the spotlight that night. With every eye focused on her, she began to speak, her voice trembling with raw emotion, shaking off the facade. As she tore off the blazer, revealing the humble t-shirt beneath, she exposed not just her own truth but the realities of countless families hidden behind the curtain of a proud community. Jake watched, his heart pounding in unison with hers. In that moment, she became a beacon of hope, reclaiming dignity for all who felt unseen. The crowd stirred, faces shifting from shock to understanding, as Ruth's words resonated, fueling a fire within them. Could one voice truly challenge the status quo? Would they stand not just for her but for their shared humanity? As the room held its breath, excitement crackled in the air, anticipation weaving through the hearts of everyone present. Ruth and Jake stood, united and resolute, as they faced a future that felt both daunting and full of possibility. The fight for their story had only just begun. Ruth's heart raced as her voice filled the gym. The room, once filled with whispers of suspicion and disdain, shifted to a powerful silence, every gaze locked on her. It was no longer just about her and Jake. It was about the truth buried under the weight of judgment. As acknowledgment spread through the crowd, she felt the tension lift slightly, but her fight wasn't over. "Do you see me?" she pressed, her eyes sweeping over the faces of parents and friends, former colleagues, and the rich elite who had looked down on her. "I am not just a waitress. I am a mother, a fighter, a witness to the struggles that so many of you refuse to acknowledge." The gasps echoed back, an electric jolt that even surprised her. The truth had a dangerous beauty, one that could shatter illusions but also unite them. Jake's breath caught in his throat. He'd always been the quiet observer, but today, something in him sparked to life. He stepped forward, drawn by the intensity of the moment. This wasn't just his mother's battle, it was theirs. "Mom!" he shouted, the strength of his voice surprising even him. "This isn't just about us. It's about every kid who feels unworthy, every family struggling to make ends meet while pretending everything's fine. We need to make this real." His words hung in the air, bold and defiant, igniting a sense of camaraderie amongst the attendees. A ripple of understanding spread as others began to nod in agreement. The skepticism transformed into intrigue, faces softened and the scowls began to fade. Ruth felt the energy shift like the tide, pulling together the once disparate voices into a collective roar. A murmur started, low and gradual, then built up as attendees began to share their own stories, inspired by Ruth's bravery. One mother spoke of working 3 jobs to keep food on the table. An elderly man recounted how he had given up his dreams for the sake of his family. Each story chipped away at the facade of wealth, revealing the common threads of struggle and resilience. Ruth stood taller, bolstered by her son's fierce courage and the growing movement around her. For the first time in years, she felt the chains of isolation begin to break. They weren't alone in this fight. Together, they could challenge the stigma that had stifled their voices. "Let us transform this community," she called out, fervor coursing through her veins. "Not just with words, but with actions. We need to lift each other up, to demand change. No more hiding behind our wealth or our fears." Jake smiled at his mother, pride swelling in his chest. Those moments when she spoke from the depths of her soul might be their only chance to redefine who they were. It hit him suddenly that her courage had ignited fire within him, one he didn't know he had. They could rewrite their story, but just as the atmosphere brimmed with hope, a sudden voice broke through, sharp and derisive. "And what do you expect will change? People like us don't listen to those beneath us." Anger flashed in Ruth's eyes, and so did the faces in the crowd. Tensions crackled. Would they allow this voice to clip their wings? Could they turn this moment into something transformative, or would the fear return, suffocating their newfound strength? Ruth locked eyes with Jake. They stood at a precipice, poised between despair and change. "We'll change their minds," she whispered fiercely. "Together." As the crowd absorbed her heat, she felt a surge of energy. A collective heartbeat began to emerge. Not everyone would agree, but this was just the beginning. They had talked of the dream, now it was time to reach for it. With fierce determination surging in her chest, Ruth took a deep breath and invited the crowd forward. "If you believe in our cause, prove it. Let's turn this into action. Are you with us?" But as hands began to rise, one figure remained motionless, their eyes cold and calculating in the back. Who were they? What did they want? The room buzzed with anticipation, but shadows lingered. This wasn't over yet. What would happen when the truth collided with power? This fight was only warming up. A thick silence settled over the gym, lingering like the aftermath of a thunderstorm. Ruth's heart pounded as she steadied her breath, trying to gauge the crowd's reaction. She felt adrenaline mix with fear. Could they really do this? Could they push back against the entrenched voices of power that had stifled them for so long? A woman in sunglasses, sharp and poised, stepped forward from the back. Ruth recognized her immediately. Margaret Sinclair, the elite fundraising chair and a close friend of the community's most powerful figures. Her eyes glinted with skepticism, the weight of her presence heavy in the air. "You think your stories matter?" Margaret called, voice dripping with disdain. "You think we owe you anything? This entire town thrives because of people like us." Ruth's chest tightened. The old fear clawed at her again, whispering that she was nothing, that their stories were worthless. But she held strong, the memory of every sacrifice she had made fueling her resolve. Yes, she shouted, surprising herself with the fierceness of her voice. Our stories matter. They matter because they are real. You may have your wealth, but you don't own the struggles we face every single day. It's time we take this back. Jake moved forward again, emboldened by his mother's strength. You think we are beneath you? We are the heart of this community. Without us, none of this, he gestured broadly to the gym filled with both his friends and the rich elite, would exist. It's time you see us for who we are, a part of this, not apart from this. A murmur traveled through the crowd, and Ruth could feel the energy shifting again. Heads turned, eyes began to widen as realization dawned. They were beginning to see beyond their fixed identities. Margaret's facade flickered for just a moment, her lips tightened as her gaze shifted side to side. She was used to commanding respect, not having to respond to the raw honesty of people like Ruth and Jake. This was new territory. Then, to everyone's surprise, a teenage girl, spiraling curls bouncing as she moved, stepped forth. I go to the same school as your kids, she said, her voice surprisingly steady. I have friends who pay their bills in change jars. I hear the laughter of kids at lunch who don't know if they'll have dinner. You can't ignore that anymore. Ruth felt her heart swell with hope. Other voices began to rise, sharing stories of late-night struggles, of decisions made at kitchen tables during dim light. Each account built a layer of strength in the room. But Margaret, sensing her grip on the power slipping, raised her chin, her authority failing but unwilling to flee. You think this will make a difference? You think your little movement can change anything? Look at yourselves. That was the tipping point. Revulsion filled the room. No more hiding, yelled a father from the back. No more pretending that if we work harder, things will magically get better. The energy surged. Hands shot up, fists filled with resolve, and for the first time, people began to move together, confident and strong. The feeling was electrifying. A wave of connection pulsed through the crowd, a unified determination that could no longer be silenced. Ruth raised her arms. This isn't just about talking, this is about action. We need to form alliances, build bridges, and create change. The rift between us and them ends today. The applause rippled through the room, phasing into a collective chant. They echoed her words, demanding action, demanding respect. They weren't going to settle for anything less. Margaret took a step back, her expression flickering between arrogance and uncertainty. In this moment, she was losing control. What would she do? As the crowd rallied, Ruth felt a surge of clarity. They might not have the resources, but they had their voices and the undeniable power that came with them. This journey was just beginning, and she saw an inkling of possibility, hope rising. But just then, a phone buzzed loudly, shattering the moment, and everyone turned towards the sound. Who was watching them? What did they want? A sense of foreboding slithered through Ruth as she realized this fight was far from over, it was only getting started. What awaited them in the battles ahead? Were they ready to face whatever darkness lay in wait? The buzz echoed through the gym, drawing every gaze towards a boy standing at the back, phone in hand. His face was pale, the glow of the screen illuminating his features. He was undoubtedly rooted in shock. The moment hung there, like the air before a storm, thick and electric. Who is it? Someone shouted from the crowd. What is going on? The feeling of hope faltered slightly as anxiety crept back in, reminding them of how vulnerable they still were. The boy's hand trembled as he spoke. It's Avery, from the news station. He says they're broadcasting this live. The breathless tone of his voice set off a wave of disbelief that rolled through the crowd. Live. Ruth felt her heart racing again. 100 thoughts whirled in her mind, pressing against her chest like a heavy weight. What did that mean for them? Would the people watching get the message, or would it simply fuel the flames of division? Are we really ready for this? Jake leaned closer to Ruth, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. Yes, she whispered fiercely, fueled by the momentum that had built just moments before. We can't back down now. This is our moment. The crowd surged in agreement, the anxious energy transforming back into fierce determination. They were on the precipice of something larger than themselves, and their voices united could no longer be ignored. Avery's voice rang through the hall, amplified by the microphones. This isn't just a story, he began, his youthful tone suddenly professional. This is a movement, a shout for justice, dignity, and action. The cameras panned across the room, capturing the raw emotion painting every face. Another voice rose, louder and more assertive, slicing through the anxious murmurs. We've been pushed aside for too long. It was a local businesswoman, someone who had faced her own battles. We deserve a seat at the table. Ruth could see heads nodding, shoulders straightening, fists clenching. It felt like a river of energy surging through them. Together they stood, ready to fight for their worth, to hold their ground. Margaret felt the walls closing in. The foundation of her privilege was shaking beneath her. She stepped forward, voice dripping with sarcasm. You really think a few voices, some anecdotes, are going to change anything? Did you think that yelling louder would drown us out? But Ruth wasn't backing down. No, Margaret. It's about time you realize it's not just noise. It's our truth. Our lives matter, and we have as much right to this community as you do. Every word poured out of her, fierce and confident. The faces of the crowd lit up with understanding. They were tired of hiding, tired of being treated as if they didn't belong. Ruth's heart soared when the sounds of agreement joined together, chants vibrating through the air, fueling the fire of rebellion inside each of them. And then, unexpectedly, the gym doors swung open. A group of students rushed in, carrying colorful posters that read, "Change starts here." Their youthful faces were bright and hopeful, untainted by the oppressive weight of cynicism. They were allies, new voices joining in the fight. As the excitement bubbled over, Ruth's gaze caught sight of Margaret looking more fragile than ever, her steely composure cracking. This was a turning point, and the manifestation of generations of silence shattering in that very moment, but just as they rallied, mixed feelings surged in Ruth. What consequences would they face? Would their defiance invite retribution from those in power? Are we prepared for what comes next? She thought, glancing around, studying the faces of her fellow fighters. They might have unleashed something powerful, but the repercussions could either make or break them. As the chants grew louder, Ruth's breath caught in her throat. They were just beginning to understand their strength, and yet, the darker shadows loomed ever nearer. What would it take to stand united against those who wouldn't want to see them rise? The excitement might have been intoxicating, but would they be strong enough to face whatever consequences lay ahead? The stakes felt higher than ever, and a storm of uncertainty brewed just beneath the surface. The phones were rolling. What story would emerge? And would they be the ones to write it? The energy pulsed through the gym like a live wire as chants echoed off the walls. Diverse voices melded into a symphony of hopes and dreams. Ruth stood at the front, heart pounding, feeling every word resonate deep inside her. This was more than a protest, it was an awakening, a transformation. Together, she shouted, raising her fist in the air. We will not be silenced. The crowd roared in response, the sound surging forward, building a wave of resistance. The excitement was infectious, and Ruth could feel it coursing through her veins like adrenaline. She could see her friends and allies energized, faces lit with determination and purpose, but then, from the corner of her eye, Ruth noticed a figure slipping through the gym doors. It was Margaret, retreating from the chaos, her eyes wide, a mixture of fear and disbelief. Ruth's stomach twisted at the sight. This wasn't just about the fight, it was about change, and Margaret was a part of that world they were challenging. Suddenly, Avery's voice cut through the escalating excitement. "We're live now," he announced, causing a ripple of nerves to sweep through the crowd. "People are watching us. This is our chance to show the world who we are, what we stand for." Ruth's heart raced. The gravity of the moment seemed surreal. Millions could be watching. What message would they send? She felt the weight of her truth, her story. The feeling was both terrifying and exhilarating. "Ruth." Jake's voice pulled her back to reality. He looked intensely focused, scanning the crowd, his voice urgent. "If we're going to do this, we need to stick together." "Yes. Together." The crowd echoed back. Ruth nodded fiercely. "Let us show them our strength. Show them our unity." She spurred them on, and they erupted into another chant, voices blending together, creating an anthem of resilience. But in the back of her mind, questions loomed large. What would happen when the cameras turned away? Was this enough to bring about real change? As the rhythm of their chants intensified, Margaret's retreating figure loomed in Ruth's thoughts. Was it possible for someone like Margaret to wake up, to join their fight? Suddenly, a loud crash rang out, pulling everyone's attention toward the entrance. A group of older community members burst through the doors, faces lined with skepticism and arms crossed defiantly. The tension in the air thickened like fog. "What is going on here?" An older man called out, authority lacing his voice. "You think you can take a stand in our town like this? Your voices won't change things." His words were met with gasps and murmurs of dissent. Ruth's heart raced again, uncertainty creeping in. This was the confrontation they had been preparing for, but would they be strong enough to face it? The man stepped forward, staring her down, his expression a mixture of anger and disbelief. "Do you think shouting louder will really make a difference?" he challenged, his voice low yet booming. With a newfound resolve, Ruth stepped forward, steadying herself against the rising tide of doubt. "Yes. Because we've been silent for too long. This is about our lives, our futures. You may not agree, but we matter." The crowd murmured in agreement, emboldened by her words. It felt like a turning point, the air crackling with possibility. If they could stand their ground now, it would be a moment etched into their history. But what if they couldn't hold the line? What if the very people whose support they desperately needed turned away in fear? As their voices filled the gym, Ruth felt the challenge ahead grow more daunting. Unity was powerful, but would it be enough against deep-rooted disdain? They had claimed their moment, but what would it mean when the cameras stopped rolling, the stakes had been raised, and the fight was far from over? Would their truth resonate beyond the walls of the gym, or was this just the beginning of a much tougher battle? Ruth's resolve hardened. Either way, they were ready to face whatever came next. Ruth felt the weight of the world pressing down on her, but she stood tall. The crowd behind her was a mixture of fear and hope. She glanced around, noticing the faces that mirrored her determination. People held signs, their messages scrawled in bold letters: "Our lives matter. Change starts here." Each one brought a spark, igniting her resolve. The old man sneered, his skepticism palpable. "You think a bunch of kids screaming in a gym is going to change the world?" His tone dripped with disdain. Ruth's breath caught in her throat for just a moment. Each word felt like a brick, threatening to crush the fragile courage they had built, but just as doubt began to creep back in, a small voice piped up from the crowd. "We're not just kids." It was Mia, a girl from Ruth's school, her face flushed with passion. "We're the future." The crowd roared again, the rhythm pounding like a heartbeat. Ruth felt a jolt of energy surge through her. It was true. They were the future, and they had a right to claim it. "Listen!" Ruth shouted, her voice steady. "This isn't just noise. This is about our dreams, our safety, our right to be heard. We are more than just the labels you put on us." The old man hesitated. Ruth seized the moment, feeling a sense of urgency rise within her. We want to be part of the community, not outsiders. Help us find a way to bring change together instead of standing against us. Jake stepped up beside her, his presence grounding her. We want a dialogue. We want solutions, not division. You've had your say, now let us have ours. His eyes sought out the older man, a spark of challenge igniting between them. Around the room, murmurs spread. The skepticism of the older community members seemed to waver, just for a moment. Ruth caught sight of Margaret's figure lingering near the back, frozen in place. Could she be swayed? Margaret! Ruth called out, drawing the attention of the crowd. This matters to you too. Your voice can help bridge this gap. Will you join us? Margaret flinched but shifted, her hesitation palpable. The shift in the crowd's energy felt like a shared breath, a flicker of hope among despair. Ruth could see uncertainty in Margaret's expression, a mixture of fear and curiosity. The old man shook his head, refusing to back down. You don't know what you're asking for. You think taking a stand like this will protect you? It's not just about protection, shouted Avery, joining in. It's about fighting for a chance. Don't you see we're begging for understanding? We want to create a future together. Ruth felt the walls of division shifting like tectonic plates. For every skeptical face, there were those ready to listen. The noise and energy surged again, responsive to the ebb and flow of their emotions. The crowd began to chant their mantra once more, a wave of solidarity crashing against skepticism, but just then, the lights flickered overhead, plunging them into semi-darkness. A collective gasp filled the room, followed by anxious whispers. Stay calm! Ruth yelled, and she felt a mix of panic and courage as she called for unity again. Don't let fear break our resolve. The gym felt alive, and Ruth's heart raced. This moment was more fragile than she understood, but it was crucial. If they could hold this space, they could break through. As the light flickered back into place, Ruth turned back toward the old man, determination blazing. If we can't trust each other, we'll never change anything. Help us. But before he could respond, a loud voice called from the back of the gym, cutting through the tension like a knife. Enough. This is nonsense. You think you can just demand respect? The gym fell into silence, every heart pounding in anticipation. Ruth could feel the eyes on her, the stakes climbing higher. In that moment, would she crumble or rise to the challenge? And then, as the murmurs of dissent swirled around her, Ruth knew the road ahead was about to get even rougher. Would they hold on to their fight, or would darkness creep in where light had already begun to shine? Ruth's heart raced as she faced the source of the interruption. A woman, tall and imposing with a sharp expression, stepped forward, arms crossed defiantly. Her crisp business attire contrasted with the raw emotion of the rally. You want respect? She continued, her voice dripping with condescension. You'll have to earn it, just like everyone else. Waste your time shouting. It won't get you anywhere. A wave of tension swept through the gym. Ruth felt the air grow thick, but she couldn't let this woman overshadow their cause. We're not just shouting. We're asking for a chance to be heard, to be part of something bigger, she shot back, her voice unwavering despite the fear clawing at her insides. The crowd began to murmur again, uncertainty flickering in the eyes of some as they processed the clash unfolding before them. Ruth caught Jake's eye, he nodded ever so slightly, urging her on. Feeling emboldened, she pressed further. You might think we're just kids, but we're not going to stand by while our futures are dictated by others. Isn't that what you wanted to hear when you were young? The woman scoffed, I didn't have time for dreams, dear. Life isn't a fairy tale. But we can make it better. Mia's voice rang out again, passionate and pleading. It doesn't have to be like that. If you could have fought for your future, wouldn't you? Ruth watched as some of the older crowd began to nod, their expressions softening slightly. Was there a crack in the armor of the skeptics? Listen to us. Avery chimed in, stepping beside Ruth, his gaze darting between the woman and the crowd. We're not just the ones who will inherit the consequences of your actions. We want to be part of the solution. The older woman's eyes narrowed. And you think just shouting for respect is a solution? Get real. With respect, cried Jake, his frustration building. Approaching this with disdain only breeds more division. Why not listen and learn? Isn't that how you truly change things? Ruth felt the momentum shifting, it was like standing on the cusp of something huge. But the woman refused to back down, her expression hard. This isn't how you get things done. You're just creating noise. We're creating a movement. Ruth responded, desperation mingling with determination in her voice. The crowd began to murmur in agreement, some holding their signs higher, voices rising in volume again. A single voice piped up from the sidelines, maybe we need to break the silence. It was Oliver, a quiet boy from their class, whose timid presence suddenly felt amplified in a room full of heated exchanges. Exactly. Ruth found strength in this unexpected ally. We want to break the silence surrounding our struggles. This isn't just noise, it's a call for connection. Can't you see that? For a moment, the disenfranchised youth stood together like a fortress against the tide of cynicism. Yet doubt crept in again. Would their anthem be powerful enough to dissolve the years of mistrust? Change doesn't come easy, kids, the older woman said, her annoyance giving way to a tone that was almost patient. You better be prepared to fight for more than just a few cheers. I'm ready, Ruth replied, her heart racing with resolve. We're all ready. But we can't do it alone. We need allies, not enemies. And right then, Ruth caught a glimpse of Margaret, still hovering at the edge of the crowd. The older woman followed Ruth's gaze, narrowing her eyes even further. What's this? You're relying on her? She's part of the problem. Margaret hesitated, the weight of the moment pressing down as the tension in the room shifted again. It was now or never. Would she step into the light or remain in the shadows? Margaret, we need you. Ruth's voice broke through the uncertainty. You've heard our voices. It's time to be brave. Help us plant the seeds of change. The room held its breath, the silence thundering in Ruth's ears. Would Margaret seize the moment, or would the wall of division remain solid and unyielding? As Margaret's eyes flickered between the crowd and the imposing woman, Ruth's stomach knotted. Was this the moment they'd been waiting for, or would it slip away into the shadows once again? Margaret took a deep breath, the air heavy with anticipation. Ruth saw the conflict swirling in Margaret's eyes, a mix of fear and the flicker of hope. Every heartbeat felt like an eternity as the room waited for her response, an ocean of uncertainty crashing around them. Ruth, Margaret finally said, her voice trembling but resolute. You have no idea how hard it is to stand against everything we've been taught. But you're right. We can't stay silent. A ripple of surprise surged through the crowd. They leaned closer, their collective breath almost audible. Was this the turning point they'd been aching for? Maybe it's time to challenge the old ways, Margaret continued, stepping forward bravely, her expression transforming. We need to address the issues instead of hiding from them. It's scary, but I see that fighting together could actually make a difference. The sharp-faced woman seemed taken aback, her features softening slightly. You think a few voices will change anything? She scoffed, but her tone lacked its earlier conviction. This isn't just a few voices, Avery interjected, his passion rising with each word. This is a wave of voices that can't be ignored. We are the future, whether you like it or not. Ruth's heart soared at Avery's words. Chills raced down her spine as the crowd began to cheer. The cracks in the woman's facade widened, and the once immovable barrier of skepticism began to crumble. Stand with us, Margaret. Ruth urged, desperation lacing her tone. We need someone who understands the world you came from. You can bridge the gap. The older woman opened her mouth to respond, but Margaret held her hand up. Stop. You've had your chance to talk down to us. Now, it's our turn to express what we feel and what we want. It's time to take responsibility. Margaret's words echoed in the gym, wrapping around Ruth like a warm embrace. I was scared to speak up. I thought it would make me weak. But I've realized that being vulnerable takes incredible strength. I'm here with you. Let us build something that we can all believe in. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. The people erupted into applause, voices rising like a tide, stronger with each passing second. Ruth felt overwhelmed with gratitude and exhilaration. In that moment, they were united, a powerful force pushing back against negativity. The sharp-faced woman's expression changed. She opened her eyes wide, processing the tide of emotion sweeping through the crowd. You think this is just about respect? You're mistaken. Change requires more than just words. It demands sacrifice. Yes, it does. A voice called from the back, inspiring a swell of agreement. But we are here to fight for a shared future. Ruth felt the power pulse in the room. It was something raw and beautiful and terrifying all at once. Together, they could start planting the seeds of something bigger than themselves, and then, as they erupted into a chorus of chants, a young girl in the front row, tears in her eyes, shouted, "We are already making history." The energy surged, filling the gym like electricity. But just as Ruth began to believe that they might actually change something, a sudden sound pierced through the crowd. A loud crash echoed from the gym doors. Heads turned, and the room fell silent, tension gripping everyone like a vice. What had just happened? Ruth's heart stopped for a moment. Fear weaved between the moments of hope. What now? She whispered, looking to the others. With the wave of optimism they had crafted moments ago, would it all come crashing down? The sound of splintering would send an icy chill through the room. Ruth's breath hitched in her throat as everyone froze, eyes wide and mouths agape. The atmosphere, once electric with hope, shifted to a thick blanket of fear. Suddenly, a figure filled the doorway. It was Luke, his face twisted in disbelief, clutching a metal folding chair that had clearly taken the brunt of the impact. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to," he started, but the panic was palpable in his voice. "Luke!" Margaret exclaimed, rushing towards him. The tension broke slightly as the crowd shifted their focus from the commotion to the two of them. What happened? Luke set the chair down, his hands trembling. "I was trying to get here faster. I crashed into the door. I thought something was wrong." His eyes darted around the room, searching for reassurance. The sharp-faced woman took advantage of this momentary distraction, her skepticism returning in full force. "See?" She spat, crossing her arms. "This is the chaos you want, the reckless outbursts without real direction." Ruth felt a surge of indignation. "No, that's not what we want. This," she gestured around the gym, "this is what we're building. Support. Trust. Togetherness." "But it's fragile," the woman countered, her voice slicing through the hopeful buzz. "You think you can change the world by just shouting louder?" Ruth took a deep breath, her heart racing. "We can't change it overnight. But every journey starts with one step. We're here to take that step." The murmurs of the crowd took on a new life. A few voices began to rise in agreement, emboldened by Ruth's conviction. Margaret stood firm, her earlier hesitance fading. "We know change takes time and sacrifice. But sitting back isn't going to solve anything." Suddenly, Luke, still breathing hard, stepped forward. "We're not just shouting into the void. We're here for each other. And if one person can take action," he pointed at the sharp-faced woman, "then we can all fight. There's strength in unity." A hush fell over the room as Luke's words hung in the air, echoing the very essence of what they were trying to achieve. Ruth felt the tight knot of fear begin to loosen. "Imagine if we all stood up," Avery chimed in, his voice gaining momentum. "Imagine if we all shared our stories. Our struggles, our voices, they matter." The crowd began to stir, hearts pounding with a renewed sense of purpose. Ruth looked around and saw the flickering embers of change igniting again. The chant revived, louder than before, "We want change. We want change." In that moment, the sharp-faced woman's facade cracked. "All right," she finally said, her voice wavering. "What do you want?" Ruth's mind raced. This was at a moment where they could shape the future and lay down their demands. "We need openness. We need accountability. We need to create spaces where every voice matters, where people feel safe." As she spoke, the crowd's energy lifted, voices rising like a wave. But just then, another sound erupted, this time from the back of the gym. A loud shout. "What about the consequences? What happens when the old guard fights back?" Ruth's heart sank. Doubts crept in like shadows. The question lingered, a dark reminder of the struggles ahead. Would they be ready to face those consequences? As the crowd fell into a hushed silence again, Ruth felt that tension gripping her heart once more. Fear collided with hope in a dramatic dance. They needed to prepare. They needed to be ready. But could they forge ahead together, or would doubt and fear ultimately tear them apart? As the eyes of the crowd turned to her, she realized they were all looking for answers. It was time to delve deeper into the unknown, into their own hearts, and what it meant to fight for a better future. Would they rise together, or would the cracks in their unity open wider? The air was thick with possibility, and Ruth took a deep breath, ready to face whatever came next. Ruth stood at the center of the gym, her heart pounding as the murmurs of doubt echoed in the silence. The question hung heavy in the air, pressing on their collective shoulders. Would the community truly stand behind their cries for change? Taking a breath, she stepped forward, adrenaline surging through her. "We are ready for whatever comes next." Her voice rang out, strong and unwavering. "We stand here as one, claiming our right to be seen, to be heard." The crowd stirred, a wave of agreement rippling through them. Jake, fueled by his mother's determination, shouted, "This isn't just about us anymore. It's about everyone." The quiet voices, the families struggling in the shadows, the dreams sidelined by fear. Ruth felt the energy shift once more, and she tightly held on to that fire. "We refuse to be invisible. Together, we demand respect, support, and a chance to build a community that embraces all its members, rich or poor." Fists began to rise in solidarity, faces bright with newfound courage. The skepticism that once clouded the room slowly dissipated, replaced by a sense of unity. Slowly, even the skeptical voices began to join theirs, not with all of their hearts, but just enough to create a foundation. Margaret stepped forward, her expression thoughtful. "Maybe it's time we reevaluate what we've known," she said, glancing at Ruth and Jake. "I've been blind to the struggles beyond my own world. I need to change, we all need to change. We can either stand together or fall apart, and I choose to stand with you." Gasps erupted, excitement mingling with disbelief. A tidal wave of encouragement surged as cheers erupted throughout the gym. Hope blossomed, tangible in the air, something they hadn't felt in a long time, but right then, the sharp-faced woman looked torn, her defenses crumbling. Fear laced her features, but it began to fade. "If we're going to do this, it's going to take every ounce of courage, and the history of divisions may still echo in our actions," she warned. "It won't be easy." Ruth nodded, her heart swelling. "But nothing worth having ever is easy. Every step we take today breaks down the barriers for tomorrow." Heads began to nod firmly as those around her took on that conviction. They started echoing back her words, transforming disbelief into a rallying cry. "I will not stop until every child knows they are valued. I will not stop until every family has the resources they need. Jake stepped up beside Ruth, determination shining in his eyes. This is our moment. Millions are watching, but the real change starts here. We together can rewrite our community's story. The chants escalated to a symphony of voices, harmonizing with a fervor that ignited in the hearts of everyone present. No longer were they just shouting into the void, they were planting seeds for a renewed future. Suddenly, laughter erupted from the back of the crowd, breaking through the solemnity like sunlight cutting through clouds. A little girl, her eyes bright, held a handmade sign that said "Together we rise." Ruth's heart swelled at the sight. This was it, the future they were fighting for, where every heart mattered, every dream counted. It felt like their convictions, like bright fireworks exploding in the stillness, the essence of change mingled with the innocence of hope. "Let us fight for them," Ruth exclaimed, fueling the fire of determination within her. "Let us fight for a community where love and support are our strongest currencies." And with that, the cheers reached a crescendo. It was a profound realization that together, they had the power to create change. Days, weeks, and months would pass, but this memorable night marked the beginning of something monumental, a movement rooted in their fight for dignity, equality, and community values. The future started shining in their faces like a beacon, illuminating the darkened corners of their town. As the night wore on, and the cameras caught every emotion, they felt the momentum shift, not merely to silence the critics but to amplify their voices for generations to come. Ruth shared grateful glances with Jake, their hearts united in purpose. With love and hope guiding them, they began to step forward, ready to face whatever lay ahead. They had taken their first steps toward a dream that now felt within reach. This was just the beginning. Now, it's your turn. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that ignite the spirit of transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm with your enthusiasm. I want to hear from you, so comment below your emotions and thoughts about this powerful ending. And don't wait not even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Together, let us build a wave of support that can never be ignored.